The Hard Count is presented by BetMGM. As y'all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this college football season. We'll be using their lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for all of you each week. Now, when you join BetMGM, you get access to a variety of parlay selection features like same-game parlays, live betting options, and more. If you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, use bonus code HARDCOUNT, and you'll get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how that works. 1, download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code HARDCOUNT. 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code HARDCOUNT when you sign up. Let's make this college football season 1 for the books. Let's make it legendary. Let's get to the show. Welcome into the Hard Count, the show for college football fans that know rivalry weekend is the 8th wonder of the world. You got the Grand Canyon, you got the Great Barrier Reef, you got the man-made wonders of the world, but college football and rivalry weekend is one of those wonders, whether you call it man-made or natural. Had to check with Cato before the show how many wonders of the world we actually had. But regardless, welcome to the Hard Count presented by BetMGM. It is Wednesday, November 26, 2025, the last one on the face of the planet. Going to make it a great one. Rankings came out last night. If you're subscribed to the channel already, then you got our reaction to that in real time. We'll show you that in a matter of moments, though, for those that are just tuned in on podcasts or just watch the full show. But again, make sure you're subscribed. Coach Translator, backed by popular demand, Lane Kiffin and Mario Cristobal. We're going to talk about what they're really more or less trying to say during these different press conferences they have throughout the week. Also, some what's being missed for the biggest games of rivalry weekend. We'll also give you a couple of more predictions because Tuesday just wasn't enough. We got to go back to the well on Wednesday and break down the Cascade Clash in Oregon at Washington. I love that rivalry nickname too. Then speaking of rivalry nicknames, Tennessee and Vanderbilt, the I-40 Cup, as some call it, or it's otherwise known as the Whiskey Barrel Bowl. We'll have a prediction for you in both those games. Appreciate y'all making this show what it is. We say it a lot. We're glad to have y'all a part of this whole thing and making this show go. So, again, we reacted to the rankings last night. Without further ado, here is our reaction moments after those rankings were revealed. Let's start, though, at number 15. That's where the rankings get a little bit juicy to me. Michigan up 3 spots. To me says, okay, you know what the deal is here. You beat Ohio State, you're in the dance. Because if you jump 3 spots after a win over Maryland, how many spots are you going to jump if you beat the number 1 team in college football? The mission is very clear here. The committee has moved Michigan up enough to where if you beat Ohio State, you're in the dance, period, mic drop, the end. The mission is clear for Michigan, and if you're Michigan, you're saying, here we come. All right, we'll see what happens. Vanderbilt, you're rooting for chaos, I think, still at that 14 spot, not up or down, but you do sort of get a maybe semi-early Christmas gift, a little early stocking stuffer, if you will, with a top 20 Tennessee team. So if we're talking resume, we're talking filters, doesn't hurt that you got a top 20 team at their place this weekend. Go handle business, Vandy. Root for chaos. We'll see what happens. Utah at 13. Miami at 12, huh? All right. Very interesting. Very interesting. We'll keep this discussion between Miami and Notre Dame here a little bit later in these rankings when we get to the Fighting Irish. But the high score to beat here, with you going to Pitt to finish the regular season, is 22. That's how many points Notre Dame beat Pitt by. If you're Miami, you want to prove a point. You want to try and get into that comparative pool we keep talking about here. You go beat Pitt by more than 22 points, you're in good shape. Now just win the game. Win the game and maybe you get some help in the ACC and you find yourself in the ACC title game. We're not even talking about the at-large equation here for Miami. But understand, that still, I think, has to be in play here for Miami when it comes to the eye test and the head-to-head with Notre Dame and all those things. A little bit surprised that we haven't seen Miami in the same comparative pool just yet with Notre Dame. Heather Dinich being on the ranking show, who does a great job, by the way, saying the committee still thinks that Notre Dame is better than Miami right now. I like Notre Dame. I actually have Notre Dame even higher in my own rankings, but we'll talk about that in here in a second. But Miami, you're within striking distance, ranked 12th, seeded 11th, but the plot thickens. Now, ranked at 11 is BYU, and BYU is tricky for me to figure out. I just keep looking at them, and the further we get into this thing, with them playing a UCF this week, probably a win for the Cougs. I'm looking at them, man, it's going to get messy. Somehow, some way, it's going to get messy because I keep telling myself they're probably in if they get to the Big 12 title game and they play Texas Tech again and they only have 1 loss in the regular season, their 2nd loss in the postseason to the same team. Like, they'll probably get in, right? I don't know. I don't know. The 11 spot right now seems to be the spot before the cutoff at the number 10 spot, which is occupied by Alabama. So I can't totally put a finger on what's going to happen with BYU. I still think they would have a path in, but the further we get into this thing, I don't know how confident I feel in that statement. Number 10, you got Alabama. Don't care about these rankings. Beat Auburn. Straight up. Go to Jordan-Hare. Take the weirdness out of it. Win that game by double digits. Win that game by a point on the last play. Doesn't matter. Just beat Auburn. You're in the college football playoff. Vibes are immaculate. We ride. Now, Notre Dame at 9. If you're not going to move up a spot after 70-piecing a team, you're probably not moving up a spot after you go beat a Stanford team who's also 3-7 or 3-win team at this point in time as well. So it is what it is. But I think if you're Notre Dame, I'm cool with where they're at. I think they should be in the college football playoff. But let's have this discussion with Miami for a second here. I'm cool with hypotheticals in the world of college football. I really am. I think that this whole discussion around bias and, oh, they don't like your logo and this, that, and the other, I think that's garbage, quite frankly. The hypothetical conversation of, oh, well, they just love to play hypothetical games. It's like, dude, we don't have a bunch of these teams playing each other. So therefore, like, we don't have Ohio State playing Georgia this year. So therefore, we have to use a little bit of this beauty pageant science right now and rank these teams accordingly. It's not the NFL. We don't have everybody playing these common opponents and have like this perfect relative to the NFL system to afford ourselves to not play the hypothetical game. So that discussion, I'm really okay with having hypotheticals. But when the games actually happened, when we've seen these two teams we're comparing actually play on a football field and one team beat the other team being ranked ahead of them, I get Miami's losses suck. I totally understand that. But at what point in time are we going to acknowledge the head-to-head of Miami over Notre Dame? And again, I still think Notre Dame should be in the college football playoff, but just this idea that we're still thinking one team is better than the other team when we've seen them actually play the sport we're trying to judge, doesn't that sit funny with anybody? I'll tell you what, if Notre Dame was in the SEC and they were getting this treatment, the amount of pearl clutching and the cries from the masses of bias and this and that, it would be unbelievable. So I'm not saying this to be anti-Notre Dame. I just want to paint this picture a little bit of everyone wants to get upset about certain conferences playing the hypothetical game. I'm cool with hypotheticals, but when the games happened, let's all chill out a bit, all right? And I think we should maybe change our logic there. Neither here nor there. Oklahoma, number 8, the Komodo dragon of college football. A little bit ugly. Doesn't matter, though. They're dangerous. They bite you. Game over. They play LSU this weekend. Beat LSU. You're not only in the college football playoff, you probably host a playoff game. Ole Miss, you're in the 7th spot. It is what it is. Still hosting a playoff game. I don't think this was a situation where like Ole Miss is being penalized for anything with Lane Kiffin or anything that's happened on the field. Like I just think they're being put behind a team that jumped them in Oregon. And this is the committee dapping up Oregon at number 6 and saying, hey, good to see you. Hey, good to see you playing a good team and winning definitively. Now, if you've watched the show, you know we've been behind the Ducks for a minute, so neither here nor there. But good to see the committee saying, Oregon, we see you, we respect you, we're giving you credit where it's due. I still think the Penn State win was worth something. Neither here nor there, but Oregon at 6, probably the right spot for them. Texas Tech at 5, no real notes here. Still probably about the Big 12 title game in some respect for what Joey McGuire and the boys are thinking in-house, but Texas Tech, real deal, a problem for you. Should you find them in the first round of the college football playoff, make no mistake about it, and I think it's going to take a college football playoff game for the rest of America to truly see just how dangerous this actual talent level is in this roster, but I digress. Georgia at 4, A&M at 3, Indiana at 2, and Ohio State at 1. Now, I want to say this. Ohio State and Indiana being 1 and 2 right now, and you would assume are going to play each other in the Big Ten title game. If they both get to Indy undefeated, I think they're both getting a first-round bye. Like, how far are you really going to drop Ohio State if they lose to the number 2 team in America in Indiana, and vice versa with Indiana losing the number 1 team in America to Ohio State, both undefeated in the regular season? I think they probably would both still stay in that top 4, is my opinion. And I kind of want to ask that same question about A&M. Like, if you get to the SEC title game undefeated, are you really dropping outside of that top 4 if you finish second in the conference because you lost one game in the postseason in Atlanta to call it a Georgia, Alabama, whoever you want to put into that slot? I think that it's fair to lock the first 2, Indiana, Ohio State, into a first-round bye, and maybe, just maybe, you side-eye A&M as a team that could be a first-round bye kind of situation as well. Now, Georgia at 4, I wouldn't want to play them. I think if you were to re-rack these rankings in the month of November, I could make a case for Georgia being top 2, if not number 1, just for how dangerous they've looked. Now, I understand that ranked where they're at for a reason. I have no issue with that, but I just want to make sure that's out there. Georgia trending upward at the exact right time. And going back to the bottom of these rankings in the college football playoff bracket, Tulane at number 12 as the highest-ranked G5 team as of right now. So no real issue with these rankings outside of this Notre Dame and Miami discussion that just is getting like progressively weirder. If Miami can be defended against Pitt, I think you have a real strong case to be in that mix on Selection Sunday, but we'll see what happens. The matchups in the first round of the college football playoff here are juicy. We'll go back to Miami. They're going to play Oregon in the first round as it stands right now. I understand the bracket would look different because we're going to have an ACC champion, which right now would take some legwork to be Miami. But if you get Mario Cristobal's return to Eugene, that would be epic. I'd be here for that. I'd be here for those storylines. And the winner of that game playing Texas A&M, I'm here for Oregon A&M, Miami A&M. Like, that would be a phenomenal matchup. Be all the way here for that. Ole Miss, Bama. Who's the head coach for Ole Miss? I don't know. Plot thickens. But that's one that being played in Oxford, Lane Kiffin said, probably the biggest sporting event in the state of Mississippi's history. Here for that. Winner plays Indiana. Oklahoma, Notre Dame. Talk about just ugly, beat down, physical, line of scrimmage kind of game. Defensive Picasso, if you will. It would look a little bit funny. It wouldn't be the most aesthetically pleasing, but you sit with it, you watch it, and a couple days later you go, that was awesome. Those two teams beat the crap out of each other, and that's football at its finest in some ways, shapes, and forms. Winner would play Ohio State, so that in itself would be a pretty good ramp up for a physical challenge against the Buckeyes. And then Texas Tech, Tulane, winner plays Georgia. I'm just saying, man, Texas Tech and Georgia, if we got that matchup, told you, I don't think the line would be all that indicative of how good Texas Tech can be. And that's coming from someone who thinks Georgia is one of the best teams in college football right now, and maybe, just maybe, is playing better than their ranking as it stands. Okay, now, one more ranking show, and then it's the real thing. Then we got Selection Sunday. Whether you call it Selection Sunday or not, that's what's on deck here after next Tuesday. But as much as you're looking at where your team is ranked, I think all of the college football world is kind of side-eyeing Lane Kiffin and what he may do after the Egg Bowl on Friday, what his decision could be and when that decision is going to be announced. We already gave you our prediction on his next move on Tuesday's show, so make sure you've checked that out if you haven't already. It's on the channel. But Lane Kiffin took the podium for Ole Miss's game week presser for the Egg Bowl, and obviously got a lot of questions about his next move and his conversation with AD Keith Carter that happened last week and what's going on there. He was very adamant he's not going to talk about his future. He made it about his team and about the game, but still there's a couple of things to translate when it comes to what Lane Kiffin had to say during his opening press conference for the week for Mississippi State. His first question that he answered, or the first question I want to break down that he answered, was the discussion around the importance for him relative to finishing the season with Ole Miss. Take a listen.
If that plays out and you guys are able to go on a run, how important is it to you to finish out the season with this team?
Very important. I've never thought of anything different than that.
Translation: I'd like to finish the year with this team. That'd be my first choice. Heck, being the head coach of a football program that we're now having a historic season on the doorstep of hosting a college football playoff game, yeah, I'd like to finish the season with this team is kind of the vibe I got there. I also think, though, if you're reading between the lines and reading the body language and reading just the overall voice inflection, there is a certain sense to me, again, just going off vibes here, not going off intel, going off vibes here. The sense to me is he is almost indirectly implying, I believe, that if he were to decide he's not going to be back at Ole Miss next season, sounds like he may not be allowed to coach in the college football playoff. That was what that answer gave to me. Again, I'm not telling you I have any intel or I'm going off of any previous working knowledge. That's just what that answer seemed to tell me. I also think that he's essentially saying, like, listen, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I started this season fully intending to finish the year as a head coach at Ole Miss. This wasn't on my radar before this season. However, as this whole thing progresses, like, we'll see what cards I'm dealt here. Also, we don't have this clipped because I don't think it's a quote worth breaking down its entirety together on the show. But he also, in a different answer, mentioned how he asked AD Keith Carter if Ole Miss were to host a college football playoff game, if it would be the biggest sporting event in the history of Mississippi. Not like Ole Miss, but the history of the state of Mississippi. And he said, Keith Carter said he thinks it would be. So in my own mind, I'm working that through and how that kind of conversation would be going and when that discussion would be had. You think Lane Kiffin's just randomly asking Keith Carter if a college football playoff home game in Oxford would be the biggest sporting event in the state of Mississippi? You think he's randomly asking that? Or do we think maybe there's some context around that question of maybe they're having a back and forth of, Lane, if you leave for another job, we can't allow you to coach. And he's probably sitting there saying, Keith, it'd be the biggest sporting event in the state of Mississippi, in the history of Mississippi. You really think that you don't want to have your head coach for that game? Truly, that's how you feel about this whole thing? I'd have to imagine there's some back and forth going on there, but just overall, again, I got a very unsettled vibe from Lane Kiffin. I got the vibe that he doesn't know what he's going to do. Also, I do have people that are tracking this thing in real time that they believe their take is he doesn't know what he's going to do. So a lot of pieces to unpack there, but at the very least, Lane Kiffin's saying, yeah, I'd like to finish the season with this team. What happens next? We're all tracking it, kind of between a rock and a hard place there with Lane Kiffin. Not his fault, the college football calendar's fault, as Nick Saban alluded to, but nonetheless, here we are. He was also asked about if he's learned anything from how he's handled previous stops as a head coach. You'd have to imagine this is a question in some way, shape, or form about how he left Tennessee and that press conference he held, which I think truly was a good-hearted move by him. It just sort of backfired in some ways. He was asked if his history as a head coach has shaped his decision-making in this process.
And then how much, if at all, have you kind of reflected on your past and leaving or staying different places? And has that helped you kind of wade through this process this time around?
No, I mean, I don't know about all that. I've kind of, over the years of the changes that I've made, I've had a lot of time to reflect and on things that have happened. And I really feel like in age, I've figured out they all happened exactly how they were supposed to happen, when they were supposed to happen. I just didn't think it at the time. I thought they were disasters. And they're just all part of my story. And, you know, I spoke at my dad's funeral when he passed, and I always wondered why we moved so much, you know, like, because it was hard on us as kids and everything. And I realized that was just all part of his story, and all the people that came to the funeral or wrote notes from all the different places. I realized that was God's plan for him, to impact all those people and have all those relationships. And so I think all the stuff that happened how it was supposed to happen. Translation:
this isn't the same as the Tennessee situation, where if you go back and watch the Lane Kiffin documentary that's out on ESPN, he talks about, man, I don't know if we should have left Tennessee. I don't know if I would have done it that way. Yes, I wanted to be at USC because in a lot of ways that was a dream job for me, but like I don't know if I really handled all that the exact way that I would have handled it at this point in time. I think him saying what he said just then in that answer in that press conference, he's saying this is a different situation. Like, I learned from that for sure. All my experiences shape me. Everything that I've done throughout my career shapes me in a certain degree, but this is a blank slate kind of situation. What I do next, whether it's stay at Ole Miss or I take the LSU job, I take the Florida job, that is strictly a this situation in a vacuum kind of approach. I also thought it was interesting he mentioned speaking at his dad's funeral. I think that was just honest Lane Kiffin there. I don't think there's any coach speak there. I don't think there's a whole lot of translation that has to be had there. I just thought he was interested. He highlighted the amount of impact that his dad, Monty Kiffin, had throughout his coaching career because they had to move places, because he coached at a bunch of different locations, because of the places that profession took him. So I think Lane Kiffin highlighting that as a positive. I don't know that has any angle in how he is mentioning that. I just think he's truly being honest in the sense that, yeah, everything that's led up to this point has shaped me, it shaped our family, it shaped my experience as a human being and as a head coach. And honestly, what we do here going forward, it's going to be in some ways reflective of that, but it won't be an overreaction to the fallout from Tennessee, the quote-unquote disaster that I think he's alluding to there with what the whole situation brought. Last question that I want to unpack together, Lane Kiffin answered, was around the team's focus, because everyone right now is talking about, will he take the Florida job? Will he take the LSU job? Keith Carter put out a statement about how he's going to have clarity after the Egg Bowl. Everyone's talking about the things around this game and not really this game. So very fairly, the question was posed to Coach Kiffin, hey, how do you think your team's handling this?
How have you seen kind of the team respond to all the noise surrounding you?
Yeah, I think they've done an amazing job. They were here at 8:30 last night and back this morning for practice. And I've said it before, it's a different generation, guys. I know it's different than what we were in when players couldn't leave and players chose to go play for their home state a lot and all that. This is a different generation. They all can leave every year. A lot of that is financially based. And so they don't think the traditional way that years ago about their coach and what's going to go on with him next year. That's not how they think anymore. And that makes it a lot easier not to listen to noise, because as a fan, that noise is really loud because it's your team and it's your team for a long time. These kids don't think that way. It's a product of the system.
Translation: this is new college football, y'all. My team's handling it just fine, from where he's standing at least, because this is how the world works in modern college football. Yes, of course, in a perfect world, us as college football fans, we grew up on a certain way of operating when it comes to building your roster. You recruit the kid out of high school, they stay with you for 3 to 4 years, they go pro, you wear their jersey long after they're gone in whatever school they went to. That's not the world anymore. Lane Kiffin is saying, listen, kids can leave at the drop of a hat if they get a bigger bag. So therefore, they're always kind of having their head on a swivel. These kids are pros, is essentially what Lane Kiffin is saying here. Translation: these kids are professionals. Yeah, I'm sure there's some degree of noise around Lane Kiffin they're having to deal with, but at the end of the day, they know what it is. They signed up for this. And that's kind of my thought here. I think that Lane Kiffin's recruiting pitch and what you hear from people around that program in Oxford, they emphasize this idea of a professional mindset, professional mentality. Essentially, you didn't bring in 58 transfers in 2 years just for nothing. You didn't bring those kids in with this idea of they're just super loyal to Ole Miss and they're super loyal to the university. You'd like to think that has something to do with it to some degree, but at the end of the day, they're there to play football. They're there to play for Lane Kiffin. People commit to people. People commit to systems. And the system at Ole Miss is what has attracted the transfer portal haul that they've had over the course of especially these last 2 years. So honestly, I think he's right. This is modern college football right now. I think these kids are wired to touch differently also with just how much is being thrown at them throughout the course of, their entire career at the collegiate level. Yes, there's a lot of noise around Lane Kiffin and what he's going to do next, but if you're a college athlete right now, you got NIL stuff being thrown at you. You have NIL deals being thrown at you that may or may not be in good faith. You have agents involved. You have managers involved. You have people trying to poach you from the portal. Social media, by the way, has just amplified all the extra noise around you as a college athlete. I think these kids that are playing college football right now, both at Ole Miss and other places, they're just wired to touch differently. They're wired in more of a professional mindset. So I say all that, but I also think we have to say this. I think it is a touch impossible for you to totally block out all the noise when you know your head coach is going to make a decision on if he's going to be there next year or not after your game finishes on Friday. Whether it's Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday, I don't know when it's happening, but we understand we're getting clarity on Lane Kiffin's future here probably, I would guess, the next 7 days is how I'm reading this whole thing, which I don't think is all that much of a reach. If you're an 18 or 22-year-old kid, it's impossible for that not to play into your psyche even just a little bit. You at least notice it. That doesn't mean this team's not going to play well. I don't think so. I think that's maybe a little bit of a generous thought, but I do think at the very least it gets into your psyche. So what happens next year, we'll find out, but I do think he's right in the sense that his team's going to handle it correctly. Also, just let me say this. Whenever you commit to play for Lane Kiffin, I don't think anybody is signing up to play for Lane Kiffin with just the ignorance that he's going to be there forever. Every single job that becomes available, his name is thrown in there. And it makes sense. He's a great coach. I think people are looking at Ole Miss and that logo and saying, maybe he can do better. Some people saying that, not me. I'm saying I think he could and maybe should stay at Ole Miss because of all the things they're doing right now, beside the point. But you understand there's always going to be noise around Lane Kiffin taking other jobs. It's been that way for the last 5. It was that way in 2022 when he was up for the Auburn job. That's the nature of the beast a little bit. So to go in line with what Lane Kiffin's saying, they're professionals in a lot of ways, but they also, I think, understand what comes with playing for Lane Kiffin. At the same time, it's hard to not hear some noise. So those are the translations on Lane Kiffin. I cannot wait to see what happens with that whole saga here in the next couple of days. And obviously, we'll have thoughts on it as soon as we get more information after the Egg Bowl. Next up, let's put the translation apparatus up to Mario Cristobal, what he has to say relative to Miami and their charge for a college football playoff berth. Got to handle business against Pitt. none of this discussion matters around where Miami's ranked and their playoff aspirations and this and that if you can't beat Pitt this upcoming weekend. So I thought he got a really good question about Carson Beck and his progress really here in the month of November. Go ahead and take a listen.
I mean, we're finding our rhythm offensively right now, and it's a combination of a lot of things, and he's a big reason why. And I mean, there's no substitute for repetitions, and but we've never used it as an excuse. But would you love to have a spring with a new quarterback and a new system? Absolutely. Those things are hard to skip, and we overcame a lot of that, in the early part of the season, but. Feel like just over time, the added reps of familiarity with both our players, being connected to our players, both on and off the field, and then just repetition is leading to him playing some awesome football. And, just judging from everything that we're seeing, we feel like it's only going to get better in the next several weeks as well.
So that question came with some context of, hey, Carson Beck was on a pitch count in the summer. He missed spring practice. I'm sure even during fall camp, they're trying to kind of manage it and gauge his progress as he's going throughout that whole, session leading into the season. Mario Cristobal, the translation there is, he's obviously playing better right now. He's getting more reps. He missed the most important part of our season when it comes to installing all our base principles, when it comes to building chemistry with wide receivers. He missed the most important, most formative part of our season when it comes to being ready for the fall. So I don't think it's a coincidence now that Carson Beck has thrown for 8 touchdowns and no picks since SMU. It's not a coincidence now that Miami's seemingly finding their footing a little bit offensively. Now, it's also not a coincidence these things are happening against some lesser competition. But the thing that comes to mind to me looking at Miami right now, if Carson Beck is still progressing, maybe we looked at Miami a little bit upside down. Because I think we saw them beat Notre Dame, and then we saw them beat Florida State, and we saw them lose to Louisville. We said, wait a second, Miami peaked too early, played their best football too early. Everyone's caught up. Miami's fraudulent. And we'll see if we were right about that or not. But I think it's also worth mentioning, hey, maybe Miami just caught an inexperienced Notre Dame team the first week of the season. They played a Florida State team that actually wasn't really even that good. And then we kind of crowned them a little bit early ourselves, and they're actually going to play their best football here in the month of November. They actually lost the games they maybe were supposed to lose relative to where their quarterback was at, where their roster was at. Their best player offensively, I believe, is Malachi Tony. He's a true freshman. He's still getting more comfortable. Maybe, just maybe, we thought they peaked too early, when in reality, they beat some Notre Dame's a good football team, but Florida State, not that great of a football team. Florida, not that good of a football team. We were counting those wins in the tally of, hey, look at Miami, look at what they're doing. Look how good they are this year. But actually, they were still a very much so unfinished product. So if that's the case now in the month of November, if the Hurricanes keep trending this way, if Carson Beck keeps playing this way, I keep saying this, don't let him in the door of the college football playoff. Say what you want about the losses to SMU and Louisville, and those teams aren't that great, or they're this or that. Whatever you think about their losses, I understand where that comes from. But I really believe that the personnel they have on this roster and the way that Carson Beck is trending, the chemistry they're building, they would be a problem if you let them into the college football playoff. Also, let's say this. As Carson Beck is progressing and Mario Cristobal is answering the question around the reps he's getting and how he's getting better, and essentially he's not saying this, but from what I can gather, more on the same page with his weapons and more comfortable in the offense. I think back to that Louisville game. 4 interceptions, could have been 5. That last interception, though, that cost Miami the game, to me it was a chemistry thing. I'm not on the same page as my tight end. I think I have a hot. I throw it hot. Whether he was right to throw it hot or whether the tight end's wrong or whether the route was correct or not, whatever it was, very clearly someone was wrong. I think that's something that you kind of figure out in the spring, no? You kind of get dialed in during fall camp, huh? If Carson Beck wasn't getting the reps he was supposed to get during those parts of the year, it would make all the sense in the world now for him to be getting those reps in a live bullet sense and to be playing better football here in the month of November. So again, I think there's a chance now that we all just kind of looked at this Miami experience upside down. We thought they peaked too early. Well, really, maybe they were just having some success early. They weren't necessarily supposed to have, to use the wrong word there. And maybe here in the month of November, Miami turns into a wagon, catch fire in the playoff, and we're having a different discussion here in the month of December about what Miami can be here when it comes to competing for more than just making the playoff. I'll leave it at that. Now, he was also asked about Miami's just competitive disposition right now. For context, Miami during a timeout against Virginia Tech, they're playing Shout in the stadium, which is a great song. Lift my hands up and shout. You've heard the song before. Miami's just having a good time on the sideline, dancing during the timeout. Someone asked him, hey, we noticed that. Is there any emphasis on your team being a little bit more loose, not being so tight with all you have to play for? Thought his answer was interesting. Take a listen.
I think dancing during a timeout has nothing to do with performance and never will. I think the improvement in play has been a matter of confidence, execution, continued advancement and evolving on offense as well. Getting a rhythm early, when the ball gets to certain guys, it kind of ignites you a little bit. Guys get fired up. That's contagious. It translates over to the defensive side of the ball as well and special teams. So I think sometimes that's like understood or perceived as just, being overly loose. But, that's, I wouldn't say that's it. Playing with confidence, having fun, playing fast due to working hard, but trusting each other, I would certainly say yes. I would agree with that part.
Translation, it's got nothing to do with dancing, what we're doing right now on the field, brother. Nothing to do with dancing. Dancing's fun. I like our guys being loose during a timeout. That's all well and good. However, we actually are starting to get our swagger back here, is what I'm reading Mario Cristobal is saying here with that answer. We're actually starting to trust ourselves, trust each other, get some confidence, have some proof in the pudding from those losses to now equating to some more wins and playing our brand of ball. We're kind of catching our stride here. Don't look out, but I think we got our swagger back. Whoa, I got our swagger back here. I'm just saying now, and here's what I will say too. You got 20 transfers on this team, 20 from this last cycle, one of them being your quarterback. Oh, by the way, you're also counting on a true freshman wide receiver, Malachi Toney, I just mentioned. I think he's probably their best offensive weapon. We've been hurt a little bit here. We got 6 or 7 starters down. We're starting to get more of those guys back in the fold and back to full strength. Maybe, just maybe now, we're actually starting to catch our stride, starting to trust the process a little bit. Last year, looking at Miami and how they kind of folded down the stretch, to be honest here, they looked like a team that was week in and week out just hoping Cam Ward would do something cool and bail them out. You were kind of hoping that. Like they were a team that ran out of gas towards the end of the year and just sputtered through the finish line with a loss to Syracuse, and you're like, gosh dang it, Miami, you blew it. That's on you. I feel the opposite way about this team. I think that they are, just what Mario Cristobal was saying, starting to gain traction, starting to figure out who they are. These 20 transfers starting to solidify themselves within their role. Carson Beck looking more comfortable after having a lack of reps during the offseason. True freshman starting to feel himself more a little bit in his role. Like all these things with Miami, it doesn't feel like it's running out of gas. It feels like it's starting to come together more and more. And so the fact that you got a question about, guys playing loose and feeling confident during a timeout, all well and good. It's a fair question to ask. I think I'd ask it too. But I think Mario Cristobal's answer was exactly right. It's got nothing to do with dancing. It's got everything to do with how we see ourselves right now, the work we're putting in to earn that confidence, the communication we have within this locker room, within this team, to be confident in each other. We're trusting the process, we're trusting each other, and good things are happening, and that's why we're playing how we're playing. And with that hard work, you feel more confident about yourself. You feel a little bit more loose because the game's been won during the week. You win a game, you win a game like back in the offseason, but during the week of preparation, you win it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, have a good travel day on Friday. That's when you win football games. And Miami feels good about their process doing that, feel good about their roster. That's why they're confident. That's why they're dancing on timeouts, and that's why the vibes are good in Coral Gables right now. So some translation there from Mario Cristobal. He's a straight-up guy as it is, but hearing what he had to say about Carson Beck and his team's disposition, we'll see what happens here down the stretch for Miami, but again, you get them in the college football playoff. Let's not pretend like anyone is lining up to play the Canes. All right? Moving right along, I don't think anyone's lining up to play Ohio State or Michigan, really, for that matter, with the seasons both those teams have had. Let's talk about what's being missed ahead of the game. Sounds impossible, right? Because we are going to talk about this game, in every which way we already have on this show. But I think over the course of a week where a game of this magnitude is being broadcast on Big Noon, and it's the game of the week on a lot of levels, and it's got college football playoff implications for Michigan, it's easy for some things to fall through the cracks, one take of which being, I don't think anyone's talking nearly enough about the pass catchers for Michigan. Nowhere near enough. Like, I understand there's this idea we have in our minds of Michigan. You think Max Bredesen getting downhill. You hope and pray he can play in this game if you're a Michigan fan. You think about Donovan Edwards creasing one in the shoe and then running for over 200 yards against the Buckeyes. Think about big Hassan Haskins in the snow. Like, you think about that. You think about gritty, blue-collar, physical, violent Michigan. That's still, I think, like who they are at their core. But if you want to beat Ohio State, you got to have another punch. Say what you want about last year, throwing for less than 100 yards and 2 picks. It's all well and good. I'm here for it. I promise you, Michigan, if you told them you can throw for 63 yards and 2 picks again this year at the quarterback position, they'd be like, well, how much we lose by? No shot we won a game that way. Andrew Marsh and Donovan McCulley are both really good receivers. Andrew Marsh, the freshman, is really starting to find his stride right now for this Michigan offense. Had almost 200 yards against Northwestern. Had a big day at the office against Maryland. And for me, watching those guys play ball, the production is nice. Obviously, that's a big part of this whole thing. You like seeing good numbers in the box score if you're a Michigan fan. Makes you feel good. But you actually watch those dudes play, they're like legit contested catch winners. Go watch that touchdown catch that Andrew Marsh had against Northwestern. Over the shoulder, guy all over and brings it in. Back of the end zone against Maryland, contested catch. Like, these dudes are legit ball in the air, my ball kind of players. And so what that says to me, what's being missed, Michigan, you'd like to scheme up some open shots downfield. I think that's one of the keys to the game for Chip Lindsey. But if you got one-on-one with some of these Ohio State DBs, this is going to be, I think, their best test when it comes to a receiving core they've played this year. Like, I know Denzel Boston's awesome for Washington, but I think when it comes to, like, the quantity of playmakers that Michigan has on the perimeter, this is going to be a different test than Ohio State has seen this year, especially in the latter half of the season. And so, while you would like to believe Michigan, if you're a Michigan fan, is going to control the line of scrimmage, same song, fifth verse, where we run for more yards than Ohio State, and we confuse Julian saying, cool, but if you got to throw the football here, I'm not saying I'm picking Bryce Underwood to go for 350 through the air, but there is a world here where Michigan has success as a multidimensional offense, and these pass catchers make some plays for them in a contested sense, not being talked about nearly enough. Also, on the Ohio State side, it's not being talked about nearly enough how much they have fresh legs on that side of things. There are a total of 0 running backs for Ohio State that have carried the football more than 20 times in a game. Think about that. Nobody has carried the football more than 20 times for Ohio State. Donaldson carried the ball 19 times against Texas. Bo Jackson carried the ball 19 times this past week against Rutgers. Outside of that, nobody's crossed the 20 carry threshold. Ohio State is 86th in college football in rushes per game. You say, well, JD, we got Jeremiah Smith, we got Carnell Tate. Obviously, we're not going to waste our time running the football. That's what got us beat last year, right? I hear you. I get where you're coming from. Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith weren't available against Rutgers, though. You did a pretty good job on the ground. But the point I'm trying to get at here, the fresh legs you have going into this spot, we understand what this game is as college football fans. Ohio State knows what this game is. It's going to be a fight, hopefully just within those 4 quarters. It's going to be a physical war in every single sense. The more physical team wins this game. Ohio State fans, I think you understand, that's why you've lost the last couple of years, last 4 years to be exact, because Michigan has outrushed you in every single loss, straight up. So for Ohio State, the fact that they are, I think, playing chess in some of these blowouts, letting some twos get some more burn, saving some carries on their running backs, I think they're saving it for a game like this. I think they're saving it for the game where they know they got to have it, they know they got to be violent. You still got to play your game. Don't get it twisted. But I really believe that we're not talking nearly enough about the pop that I think Ohio State's going to show up with here on the line of scrimmage with the offensive line and with these running backs and how much extra juice they'll have relative to what the rest of November looks like in the world of college football. You get to November, everyone's dinged up, everyone's beat up, everyone's tired. But Ohio State, if you're on the less tired, less beat up side of that equation, advantage you on the line of scrimmage. Is that the case? Remains to be seen, but it's not being talked about nearly enough how fresh Ohio State might be in this spot. Also got to say this, there's a whole lot of fresh faces in this spot for both sides of this thing. You got a new DC for Ohio State, a new OC for Michigan, new quarterbacks for both sides. You got freshman skill players for both sides. They're going to factor in a big way. You got a transfer wide receiver in Donovan McCulley, who's going to be a go-to guy for Michigan in this spot. Like, there is a lot of new faces for both sides of this equation, and the reason why that's important, I think just in general, as people, we like to look at history as like a teacher for the future, and some of that's fair. But in this spot, like, I would be very careful how much I weigh history. Yes, Ryan Day's involved, and his record against Michigan speaks for itself. Yes, Sharon Moore hasn't lost to Ohio State. But I don't think anyone's walking into this game carrying the weight of those 4 years that's going to be in uniform. Now, guys have lost to Michigan for Ohio State, of course, but I don't think it's the same like vibe you had last year where Jack Sawyer's trying to find a way to beat Michigan and C.J. Stroud's trying to find a way to beat Michigan for the first time in his career, and J.J. McCarthy's never lost to Ohio State. Like, I appreciate those storylines for what they were, and I think those were fair to factor in going into those respective games. But in this game, man, I think you're starting at a blank slate for both sides. The emotion will be intense. I've been on the field for this game before, especially at the start, and your heart is in your throat. The volume is ridiculous. You feel like you're part of something special before kickoff in that game. And I'll tell you, it's a special atmosphere, special environment. I think it's going to be a very intense game because it's the game, but I don't think it'll be intense for either side because of the weight of a previous loss for Ohio State or the weight of a previous win, last 4 wins, quite frankly, for what Michigan has been. So just take this whole, Michigan's won 4 straight with a bit of a grain of salt. Not saying Michigan can't get it done. It'd be foolish to think that's not going to be possible in this spot, but just keep a side eye to that. I think you got to weight this game with a total sum of 0 when it comes to previous experiences for both locker rooms. Now, the Lone Star Showdown is also going to be electrifying. I cannot wait to watch these 2 rosters go at it, these 2 head coaches go at it. What's being missed in A&M and Texas? Texas, I think, is not being given enough love for the offensive firepower they could have in this spot. Okay, Arch Manning kind of finding his footing. He's catching touchdowns. He's running for touchdowns. He's talking his cash to the camera before they run in the tunnel. Like, since the Kentucky game, he's been hooping, man. I mean, threw for 250 against Georgia in a tough game for the Longhorns, but I left that game saying, all right, if that's Kirby and Glenn Schumann defense for the Dogs, and Arch looks comfortable against that, he's seeing it against that, okay, I mean, I don't know if it's, a moral victory, but it's not a negative data point in my mind with all the drops that he had to deal with in that spot. The speed that Texas has in the receiver room, specifically a one Ryan Wingo has, there is potential there for them to give A&M some issues on the back end. A&M is good by the numbers. I keep saying this, but A&M over the course of this season has had some leakage on the back end. All right, it is not a fortress of a secondary. They've had explosive plays given up through the air in every single SEC game they've played. So you're looking at Mississippi State, and as poor a year as it has been for the folks in Stark Vegas relative to what A&M's doing, there's not a world where Texas can't recreate that. It's not a world where Texas is going to struggle through the air. Like, I think that's very much so on the table in this spot for Texas. And if that happens now, because Sark's going to cook something up. Sark's been eyeing this game. He's ready for this game. He's going to empty the freaking clip, because why the heck would you not if you're Texas staring down the barrel of being 3 losses already? There's a world where Marcel Reed and the boys got to chase points in DKR. There's a world where they may be on their heels, and Colin Klein and the guys are trying to recalibrate in the second half and try to find a way to chase Arch Manning and the guys. And if that happens now, that Texas defense, as much as they've struggled over the course of the last couple of weeks, there's still a lot of personnel on that side of the football that can make it very difficult if you're a one-dimensional offense. Again, chasing points because Arch and Wingo and Sark and the Texas outfit got the jump on you at home in a rivalry spot. Just keep an eye on that. It's not being talked about enough, in my opinion. Now, I think also on the other side of this, I don't think we're talking nearly enough about how ideal Texas A&M's scheme is against Texas's defensive personnel. Because we talked about Colin Simmons during the preview, and we should have. It would have been malpractice if we didn't talk about Colin Simmons or Anthony Hill or what that front seven can do for you against this Texas A&M offense. Texas is top 3 in college football in yards per carry allowed as a rush unit. They do a great job getting after the quarterback. But with that being said, what does Texas A&M do a lot of? Put the ball in the perimeter, option stuff with Marcel Reed, get the ball out of his hands quickly. All of those things to me say Colin Simmons, you're not going to have a lot of chance to rush the passer here. Colin Simmons, we're not going to try to block you, brother. We're just going to read you. We're going to read you in the inverted veer stuff and the jet sweep stuff. And as much as you want to, try and wreak havoc, maybe there's some plays where you'll get us, but for the most part, we're not going to let you take over this game because we're going to try to block you. We're just going to read you. And then whatever you do, you're wrong. You want to crash on the dive? Cool, we'll pull it. You want to try to play the dive? Cool, Marcel Reed will get outside. All those things I think for Texas A&M need to be mentioned out loud. I also want to say, A&M, they're top 15 in America when it comes to their sack rate allowed. Again, going back to this, they get the football out of Marcel Reed's hands quickly. It's not 3 steps in a hitch, let 4 verts develop downfield. They'll do some of that for sure, but that's not really their bread and butter. So again, Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, you're not going to have a ton of time to try to rush Marcel Reed because it's 1-2 balls out. Like I would imagine right around 2 seconds is probably what they're aiming for in College Station. So last thought here, not being talked about nearly enough, it's a rivalry game. Things get weird. This game being a 2.5-point spread favoring A&M in some ways also maybe feels a little bit weird for you. If you're an A&M fan, you're like, 2.5, that's it? Special teams may determine this thing. If you've watched our preview, I think it comes down to a walk-off field goal. You're looking at the return men in this game. Ryan Niblett, he's won Texas, 2 games? Red River in Kentucky? Or at least had a very heavy hand in winning those 2 games? Who's to say Ryan Niblett in a 2.5-point spread kind of game that just slightly favors the away team, who's to say he doesn't flip that spread on its head and finds a way to will Texas to some advantageous scoring positions and puts A&M in a tough spot if Texas can't score like that? That whole field position flipping possibility for Texas, that could be the difference here because it has been here multiple times over the course of their season. Now for A&M, Terry Bussey very quietly second in the SEC in return yards. Casey Concepcion, if you watched him this year, you know he's a big play waiting to happen, especially in the return game. Who's to say maybe it's a close game in the fourth quarter, Texas is foolish enough to kick it to Concepcion, he houses one, game blouses. That's how it went down. Hey, we did a great job against Marcel Reed. We kept him from setting his feet. Arch had a good day, but we kicked to Concepcion, we kicked it to Bussey, they housed one of them, we lost by a touchdown. Again, the spread is telling you it's going to be a very tight game. And in tight games, it comes down to special teams a lot of the time. Now, Randy Bond, A&M's kicker, we appreciate kickers on this show. We're not an anti-kicker outfit. We understand you got a hard job. But Randy Bond is 61% on the year when it comes to his kicking game. In a game that's essentially a field goal spread, I don't love the way that feels if I'm A&M. On the other side, Mason Shipley for Texas, right on 80%. He's 1 for 4, though, from 50+. Does that matter? How much do you dock your kicker for missing from more than 50+? I mean, I don't know if you can be all that critical. Just something to think about. If it's coming down to the wire and either of these teams had to kick a field goal, just something to maybe sleep a little bit more uneasy at night for both sides of this thing. Special teams will play a role in finishing this game for both sides, mark my words. And it's not being talked about nearly enough for my money, all right? So moving along here, you know what's not being talked about nearly enough is what Florida State's doing right now. And if you're a Florida State fan, bear with me here. Like we get a lot of accusations on this show of being too positive, being too glass half full, never say anything bad about anybody. One, if that's your take, you're not watching the show. That's first off. Second off, if that is if that is like somehow, some way true, we don't apologize for that. I think college football is a hard thing. Having played the sport ourselves on this side of things, we understand there's a lot of different things that go into being successful, and you're always a detail here or a detail there from being successful, so we don't apologize for that. But we're not about to be positive right now. Florida State has made the decision they're going to retain Mike Norvell. I saw this. I read the first sentence. I thought I read it wrong. I read it again. I saw the graphic. Just felt sick to my stomach for the folks in Tallahassee. Massive disclaimer, I like Mike Norvell. He's been nothing but good to us on this show. I think he's a good football coach. I think he's got proof in the pudding of being a good football coach. But what's happened in Tallahassee is not good for either parties right now. It's not. And I hate this for you, Florida State. I hate this for you because what it feels like to me is you are settling in a massive way. In a massive way. And I keep saying this too, at a place like Florida State, you shouldn't ever have to settle. You shouldn't, with that logo, when you think about the most iconic brands in college football, you think about Blue Bloods, you think about Florida State in that Tier 1 category. And that's not me just hyping up Florida State because they're good for us on YouTube. That's the fact of the matter. I think most people with a brain that watch college football would echo that same sentiment. Florida State, when they're rolling, it's pretty fun for the sport. And it's not like they're this like middle tier logo or they don't have a track record of success. Florida State, a couple of years ago, won the ACC. Depending on who you ask, should have been in the college football playoff. We're not like far removed from the good days at Florida State. And maybe you say, JD, that's why we're keeping Mike Norvell. Really? Because you went 2-10 and you're fighting to make a bowl game this year. That should not be okay with anybody ever in Tallahassee. Ever. And I think when you look at this from a fan's perspective, it's not just that you're not having success, it's that you're okay with not having success. It's the fact that you're letting it happen. That's what makes me frustrated for Florida State. Like, do you not understand your Florida State? I guess is my question to all this. And some people might rebuttal back and say, well, but JD, you said it yourself. James Franklin was the best hire for us, and we waited too long for that to happen. He's at Virginia Tech now. Like, who would we go hire? Literally anybody that would do better than what you have right now. People act like the candidate pool is dry. No, it's not. Alex Golish at USF, he'd be an upgrade in my opinion. Kenny Dillingham, who's been in Tallahassee before, you at least give him a call. Try to get him over to Tallahassee. I've said Will Stein, I think he's going to be a head coach at some point in time. Might as well be first on the bus there if you're Florida State. Throw your hat in the ring. Literally anyone who can do better for you is a good candidate. And I think that list of people that could do better for you at Florida State, with being in the state of Florida and the high school talent there and the resources you have to believe are there for Florida State, literally, I mean, this is why it's frustrating, because it's not a matter of who could you go get. If that's your answer, that's a lazy answer, an extremely lazy answer. The other thing I think you hear people say is, well, JD, we can't afford it. And this I sort of understand, because the buyout for Mike Norvell is right around $58 million. So it's not a small price to fire the guy. I totally get that. If that's your logic, it's hard for me to have this super strong stance against that. But at the same time, how much are you losing by not firing him? Can you afford to keep Mike Norvell? Because I look across the state here, Miami, they're trending upwards. They're fighting to be in the college football playoff. Mario Cristobal, every single year they're recruiting in that top 15, top 10 range, sometimes higher than that. Miami's got the arrow pointing way up. You're getting passed by them. Florida, at the very least, are throwing their hat in the ring for Lane Kiffin. They're going to hire somebody. I have to imagine they'll take a pretty big swing. A lot of talent on that roster. You're getting passed in your own state, and you're getting passed badly. It looks like you don't care. The optics are, we don't care enough, whether it's true or not, we don't care enough about success on the field to where we're just going to go ahead and burn another year, hoping this works out with Mike Norvell. Listen, we know where this is going. If you got to put out a statement and say, yeah, we're behind until the end of the year, we'll talk at the end of the year, and now you're going to retain him. If you put out a statement saying we support our head coach, you know how this thing ends. Like, I hope I'm wrong. My prediction is this thing happens probably before October next year, where Mike Norvell is no longer your head coach, and you've now burned effectively 2 years. Year and a half, depending on how you want to phrase this whole thing. I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong on this whole thing. I think Florida State, again, when they're humming, it's great for college football. I think it is just fun as a college football fan to see that logo ranked and to see big games being played in Tallahassee with Chief Osceola and you know the spear being thrown down at midfield when it's on. Like, there's so much that's cool about Florida State, especially when they're humming. But you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. If you don't want to play ball and go do what LSU did, fire their head coach for, again, north of $50 million, and then go hire a new head coach and be willing to make the sacrifice to be successful, you're going to be unhappy when you are in this same position next year, talking about, can we make a bowl game? I'd love to be wrong, but that's just how I feel about this whole thing. Last thought here, I said this with other coaching searches, but I want to say it again because I think it applies to Florida State. There's a book out by Trevor Moawad, who was a sports psychologist, essentially, for a lot of these different sports in general, but especially college football for guys like Kirby Smart, I believe Nick Saban as well. And he has a book called It Takes What It Takes. And in that book, he has a chapter about the illusion of choice, which essentially says having choices is really just an illusion when it comes to what your goals are. Like Florida State, you don't have choices about keeping Mike Norvell or not keeping Mike Norvell if you want to go in at the highest level. There is no choice. It's not going well enough. We have to make a pivot. We don't have the choice of should we keep him, should we not keep him. No, we got to make a pivot because we want to be a team that competes for, at the very least, ACC titles, but absolutely long-term national championships, which is what Florida State, I think, would like to eventually attain again at a certain point. You don't have choices. The choice is we got to get a new head coach in here. And again, I hate saying that out loud because it sounds like I'm just super down on Mike Norvell, the human being. That's not the case. I think he's a great coach. I think he and his track record should in some way speaks for itself in that way, but it's not a fit. It's not a fit, and at some point in time, it's best for all parties to acknowledge that. So that's how I feel about this thing. Florida State, let's boss up, let's play ball, and you reap what you sow. You're getting passed in your own state, and that is what it is, man. It is what it is. Hate it for the folks in Tallahassee, man, but so it goes. Onward. Speaking of onward, we got some big games here on Rivalry Weekend. We broke down a bunch of them yesterday, but you know what? Sometimes just one prediction show ain't enough. Sometimes you gotta double down on a Wednesday and unpack a couple more games that are going to be played this rivalry Saturday, one of which being Vanderbilt at Tennessee. Tennessee minus 2.5 right now, according to BetMGM. A couple of cool rivalry names for this one. You got the Whiskey Barrel Bowl, I-40 Cup, whatever you want to call it, 3:30 Eastern, ESPN. Do not look now, but Vandy's college football playoff hopes are alive. They're breathing. They're on life support. They're alive now, all right? So, Vandy, if you win this game, you feel like you've done your part to be a college football playoff contender. We'll leave it at that. Now, Tennessee, it's not beneath you to play spoiler. I know it feels weird saying, can we spoil Vanderbilt's hopes of being a college football playoff team? I get how that feels, but I'd go back to the offseason where Diego Pavia is talking about Vanderbilt running Tennessee. I'd go back to this idea of just playing in Neyland as well and defending home turf in a rivalry game. If you don't think you have anything to play for against Vanderbilt, I would check your pulse. I think there will be a good amount of emotion on the Tennessee sideline. Here's my question. How does Tennessee go about sorting out the Vanderbilt run game? Notice I say sorting out. I don't question Tennessee's physicality. By the numbers, Tennessee is one of the better run defenses in college football. They got guys in that front seven that have no issue with contact courage or getting downhill with bad intentions or wanting to knock Diego Pavia's head off. I promise you there is a bunch of dudes in that locker room that are down for the cause when it comes to stopping the run. However, what Tim Beck for Vanderbilt and what Diego Pavia for Vanderbilt do so well, give you a lot of eye candy, give you a lot of different things to deal with on the back end. They give you different things on the perimeter to worry about. They give you a to-do list offensively that they're giving you as a defense to try to handle when it comes to sorting it all out. Can you be consistent enough in your integrity when it comes to stopping the run? Okay, because if you can't sort out that jet sweep motion and figure out who has the football, or you get sloppy on your read keys, or you try to do someone else's job because you can make a play, if that happens for Tennessee, that's where you get gashed. That's where those numbers where you are in stopping the run doesn't actually really matter. It's all about can you actually play your assignment consistently, not get bored with it, keep showing the run. And if you do that now, you should be, again, personnel-wise, in a pretty good spot to keep Diego Pavia and that backfield at bay. Now, on the flip side, can Joey Aguilar force Vanderbilt to put on the track spikes? Now, I don't want to do the thing where we say, can Vandy score with Tennessee? Because Vandy, in their own right, has been a phenomenal outfit offensively. They've proven they can hang with anybody when it comes to answering scores. Go look at the Texas game and the way they got back into that game. Diego Pavia went for over 3 bills through the air. But we understand that style of game isn't really the kind of game that I think Vanderbilt would prefer to play. They can play it, but they would like to, I think, hold the ball for a while, have the game played probably in the upper 20s, have like 35-plus minutes time of possession favoring the Commodores. Can Joey Aguilar just say, nope, 14-0, you got to match us. Nope, sorry, 9.1 yards a pass, one of the best in college football, got to play with us. Nope, sorry, we're explosive as all get out. You got to be explosive with us. Because if you're not, if you have empty possessions, 2 or 3 of those, we're going to put you in a hole here real quick, and we're going to keep scoring. So you better bring your best as well, Vanderbilt, through the air. You got to also be able to have a little bit of juice to match us on that side of things. Joey Aguilar has got to just not predetermine where he's going to go with the football. And this is not me trying to oversimplify Joey Aguilar's job. Because being a quarterback in the SEC, there's a million things I'm sure he's checking through pre-snap and going through during the week on his keys and all those things. But from the outside looking in, watching the Oklahoma game, it feels a little bit like he would pre-snap, like something, stick with it, think he can make a throw, be married to a decision before the snap, and then it would end up in a turnover for Tennessee. Vanderbilt's good enough up front as a defense to apply some pressure and speed him up. So if we're not processing this in real time, Joey Aguilar, that's where the turnovers happen. That's where things get a little bit uncomfortable. And if you give extra possessions to Vanderbilt, they're going to anaconda squeeze. They're going to run the football. They're ideally probably when they get turnovers going to be in a advantageous position on the field-wise to be able to apply some pressure there as an offense. Like, that's the world where you don't want to live if you're Tennessee. Extra bullets for Pavia, bad world for Tennessee. Now, in the same way, Diego Pavia, I do think it's still about running the football for Vanderbilt. But in my opinion, never in college football, especially on rivalry weekend, can you turn away any potential advantage? And the advantage here for Vanderbilt is Eli Stowers and that receiving core versus this Tennessee secondary. Y'all, it's not good. It's not good. Allowing 255 a game through the air, 112th in college football is Tennessee. Diego Pavia, for all I said about his ability to run the football, he's proven he can beat you through the air. Maybe he's not like the prototypical NFL prospect, but over 300 yards against Texas, that's a good secondary. He's got the chops to beat you. And I go back to Eli Stowers, too. He's got the chops to beat you. He is an NFL kind of prospect with what he is at that tight end / H-back position. So if Tennessee isn't able to hold their water on the back end, and maybe they get a little bit aggressive trying to play the run against Vanderbilt, an explosive play turns into 14 points here pretty quick favoring Vanderbilt, okay, now we have to press. I keep saying how much Vanderbilt wants to run the football. Y'all, Tennessee's a run-first outfit as well. They're also a 53% of the time run the football outfit in Knoxville. So they want to set up the pass game as well. And if you're down 14 points, it becomes a lot harder to do that. Who owns the fudge plays in this spot? You know Diego Pavia is going to get you a few. Break contain, reverse field, puts the ball up in the air. What happens next? Because Tennessee, as much as that secondary has been bad this year, they're also one of the best in the country when it comes to taking the football away. Top 15 in America is Tennessee, averaging right around 2 turnovers a game. Diego Pavia now, in the same way, has had a propensity this year to take a seemingly negative play and turn it into a gash play favoring Vanderbilt or a touchdown or whatever it is. Like, he almost specializes in the chaos. So the fact that both sides of that equation, the Vandy offense and the Tennessee defense, specialize in chaos and seem to thrive in chaos, who gets more of those plays is really what it comes down to. And some of that you can't quantify. It's just kind of rivalry weekend magic and those two sides having competitive plays and seeing what happens with the bounce of the ball. But that in itself, I think, will be a lot of fun to track and a lot of fun to watch. Before I give you my pick in this game, if you want to be at this game, the best way to do that is with our friends over at Game Time, all right? If you're going to be at Neyland, there's not a lot of bad seats in Neyland Stadium, in my humble opinion. Haven't been there before. But if you want to make sure you're just like double and triple checking your view from your seat because it freaking matters to you because you're a college football sicko, you can see the view from your seat using the app before you even purchase it. Also, if you're in the area, maybe you're in Nashville and you want to track what tickets are going for all the way up into the game, you can do that using the Game Time app. Track ticket prices in real time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code HARDCOUNT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code HARDCOUNT for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Swipe, tap, ticket. So at the end of the day here, I think that as good as Vanderbilt has been this year, I still feel like the right combo of front seven talent plus offensive explosiveness makes them very gettable if they see that in an opponent. I think the Texas game in itself, Vandy climbing back into that was super impressive. Don't want to take anything away from Clark Lee and the boys. However, that had some potential to get out of hand. And I think Tennessee watched that tape, is licking their chops. I think Tennessee wins this game. I think Tennessee covers. I think you're looking at a final score somewhere in the category of like 34-31. I think it's high scoring. The more high scoring this game is, the more I think it favors Tennessee. And also with it being in Neyland, I think that factors in as well. So Tennessee wins a close one. 3 points is the margin of victory. And Tennessee, unfortunately now, ends Vanderbilt's college football playoff hopes on the last week of the regular season. But so it goes. All right, last one here to break down before rivalry weekend is ours. Our last prediction, rather, I suppose. The Cascade Clash, baby. Oregon, favored by 6.5, going to Seattle to play Washington. 1, this is an awesome rivalry name. 2, for Oregon, it could be the difference for you when it comes to hosting a college football playoff game or going on the road in the first round of the college football playoff. Also, let's be real. We don't know exactly what those next couple of rankings are going to hold for you when it comes to how the landscape is going to look. So you'd like to think you're safe in the college football playoff, Oregon, but I don't know. I'm just saying, don't get to 10-2 and find out would be my advice for Dan Lanning and the guys. Now for Washington, you hate Oregon and that's enough. And that's a beautiful thing for what this weekend is in college football. I said it before. Rivalry weekend is a time machine for all of us that takes us back to what college football was built on. Emotion, pageantry, I hate your team, I love my team. We're going to handle this on the last week of the regular season, and we will celebrate for 365 If we win, we'll cry for 365. If we lose, that's enough for Washington to get up for this game. And I love everything about it. So here's my question when it comes to Washington offensively. How much do you get Damon Williams going? Through the air, of course, big part of this. But I'm looking at that Oregon front, and I'm looking at the way they've been able to stop the run this year. I don't know if you just hand the ball off to your backfield and feel good about your chances to generate some juice on the ground. With what Bear Alexander is, with the way that Bector's getting downhill. Like they got some guys in that front seven, man. I don't think you just go our guy versus your guy. You hope Jonah Coleman is getting continually healthy going into this game. I'm wondering what Damon Williams is on the ground here. In the +1 run game. In the divided defense run game against Oregon. Had a great day on the ground to Damon Williams against UCLA. If you can get that working for you early, Washington, I think explosive plays happen off of that. And we've seen Oregon, too, on the perimeter. They're gettable. I wouldn't say they're like a weak unit by any stretch of the imagination, but you've seen like the top-end talent in college football, with Mekhi Lemon being a Biletnikoff Award finalist, Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper from Indiana. That's been the area that teams have had some success when they're competitive against Oregon. Now, to be clear, Oregon still is one of the best secondaries in college football. Don't get it twisted. But I'm watching very closely what's going on with Denzel Boston ahead of this one. Because if you're going to beat Oregon, I think it goes with two things. Again, getting something going in the run game with Damon Williams and then having explosive plays off of that. If you can get that rolling, here's my thought for Washington. Just ride the moment, baby. Rivalry weekend, weird things happen, emotions at an all-time high. You kind of throw records out the window, throw logic out the window. Emotion seems to be something that rivalry weekend is built on. Who's to say that Washington doesn't get some of that magic in the first half? They're up 10-0. They're believing. That crowd's going crazy. Previously one of the longest home winning streaks in all of college football out there in Seattle. Maybe, just maybe, the rivalry juice and the Damon Williams element just gets the boys going and you're riding high and it's like, okay, now here we go. One score spread turning out to be right around accurate for this game. And like, here we go now. Here we freaking go. On the flip side, how much of this game is Washington able to put on Dante Moore's shoulders? Because that Washington defense, by the numbers now, top 20 in college football in rush yards a game allowed. I don't think it's a coincidence here that Oregon's one loss comes on one of their worst rushing performances of the season. Indiana held him to less than 3 yards a carry. Indiana got after Dante Moore. When Dante Moore didn't have that run game behind him, you saw him a little bit sped up. You saw him make some poor decisions. Some of that also goes with the Indiana pass rush, but neither here nor there. So for Oregon, can you be creative to find ways to run the football? If Washington is who that number says they're going to be against the run, can you get something going with the eye candy, the misdirection, the Will Stein special? You'd like to think so, to get the eyes going back and forth and big plays open up downfield. Because this Oregon offense is run to pass. That's how they want to set it up. But if you can't set things up, then Dante Moore, who are you, brother? Who are you when you don't have that run game behind you? I think it's a question that Washington would like to pose to a one Dante Moore. Now, I say all that. Here's the way that I feel about this, Washington. I think you're a little bit fugazi with that run defense. Not bad, but are you top 20 in college football good? That Wisconsin number says otherwise. They had some success on the ground against you, just being physical and making a point to run the football. Michigan, same deal. Looked at that number and said, interesting. 106 yards allowed a game on the ground, Washington. We'll take you for right around 200. How's that sound? I think the elite running the football units that have had success against Washington, I think that's the number that I trust a little bit more than what the average is over the course of the season. I also think now that there's nobody in college football not named Caleb Downs that I feel can match up with one Kenyon Sadiq. I mean, the dude's 6'3", 245 and jumps over people, catches the ball like a receiver. He's got real deal speed in the open field. Like there's not a matchup there that I like for Washington against him. So if you want to give him extra attention, that's fine. Dante Moore is going to find Malik Benson. You hope you get more and more health in that receiver room here over the course of the next few weeks, Oregon, and maybe even going into this game. But I don't love the way that sets up here. If I'm a Washington fan heading into this thing, using my eyes, that just doesn't feel great. So I don't think psychopath Dan Lanning, this close to the college football playoff, is going to let his team slip. If you watch the cinematic recap of them after the USC game, he's talking about how you're wearing black because you're at a Trojan funeral here. Matt Leiner's not walking through that door for USC. Reggie Bush isn't there anymore. They're off their history. We're off of right now, is what Dan Lanning was speaking to. Like that psychopath mentality here, not to say anything of Jed Fish. I think that's probably the team I'm going to lean with here. Here's the stats that I just don't like relative to Washington's prospects in this game. By the numbers here, they're not going to affect Dante Moore. Even if they stop the run, they got a 4% sack rate on the year. One of the worst in college football. So Dante Moore, even without a run game, gets to sit back there and more or less play 7-on-7. Don't love that. Also, they're not great protecting Damon Williams. Now, that 7% sack rate being one of the worst in college football as well, protecting the quarterback, I think that number's a little bit skewed because of how much they run Damon Williams. But even still, you're telling me that you have a hard time keeping your quarterback off the ground against that Oregon front, and you're not putting the other quarterback on the ground? That's all I need to see. Oregon's trending in a different direction right now. I think they're catching their stride. I think they're a wagon. I think the respect for them around the country is massively being misplaced relative to how good the Oregon Ducks, I think, really are. I think they make a point in this game. I think they put everyone in college football on notice. I think the final score in Seattle is Ducks 31, Washington 17. Oregon wins, Oregon covers. And out of the regular season now, we're looking at Oregon and saying, all right, yeah, the Ohio States and the Indianas of the world and the Big Ten are going to get the love and play for the conference title, but golly, I don't want to go to Autzen to play that team the first round of the playoff. So, again, we got Oregon winning, Oregon covering, and that's how we see that whole thing shaking out in the Cascade Clash. All right. Cato, you were saying even before the show, man, kind of the same thing. You think Oregon's a wagon right now. We mentioned it during our 12 questions yesterday, or on Monday, rather. What's your thoughts on this game, man?
Yeah, I think I don't have much here. Oregon is going to roll, I think. I feel like they're disrespected a little bit in the rankings. I feel like after the Indiana game, they've been kind of just put to the wayside of the national conversation, and we've kind of forgotten how much talent they have. I think they're starting to hear that. I think especially after the rankings and what they did to USC, like they're trending in the right direction, and I think they're perfectly timed for the playoff. More so whole episode, JD. I had two big takeaways and questions I wanted to ask you. Big picture with what we talked about on this show. Number one, I think what's being missed narrative-wise, Ohio State, Michigan, is legacy, man, for these two young quarterbacks. Like, I think as far as approval rating in those respective college towns, I can't decide what would be better if you're 20-year-old Julian Sayin, who can break this streak that's been haunting Ohio State for the last couple years, or if you're Bryce Underwood, this highly touted 5-star plus recruit who has opportunity to go out in front of their home crowd and keep the streak going and kind of live up to your legacy and your billing as a recruit in this moment. Who do you think has like the bigger draw here for both of these young quarterbacks, a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old who have the biggest rivalry kind of on their shoulders in this moment right now, the biggest games they've played in their career?
Dude, it's a great point. It's a really good point. And as you were unpacking that relative to the way this rivalry has gone the last 4 years, Ohio State, the 4 losses, 3 different quarterbacks. C.J. Stroud's got 2 of them. Kyle McCord got one of those losses, and Will Howard got one of those losses. So Julian Sayin, barring something wildly unforeseen, somebody else taking that job from him in Columbus, if you win this game, you're back next year, and you still got the crown. You lose this game, that weight probably sticks with you a little bit if you're Julian Sayin. Now for Bryce Underwood, I think the thought I have around him is the first thing said with Bryce Underwood, anytime you talk to anyone in the world of college football that's tuned into this whole thing, is like, oh yeah, it's a $12 million recruit, right? Like, you're paying him how much, and he didn't beat Ohio State? Or I think the pressure around both is immense, but I almost feel like there's more pressure on Bryce Underwood because of his story arc getting to Michigan. He's the one that's supposed to change the Michigan offense. He's the, like I just said, $12 million recruit. We flipped from LSU. He's showing the sign of new times at Michigan. Like, he's kind of the poster child for that. So if it turns out to be a thing where Michigan loses to Ohio State, dare I say more than 1 year in a row, it becomes this discussion of, well, hey, did we forget what got us here a little bit? You know, did we forget the morals of Michigan football? That whole discussion, I think, would maybe be a little bit irresponsible out of the game, but that's kind of what this game has been. You get intense, irresponsible narratives, and that's what we love about college football. So I'll say there's more pressure on Bryce Underwood, but if Julian Sayin can't slay the dragon next year, will not be the whole year won't be a fun vibe for A1 Julian Sayin.
Yeah, I think glass half full, glass half empty is like very much going to depend on who wins and loses the game. Like, I think if Bryce Underwood loses, there is a glass half full where it's like, this is his first stab at it. He has 2 more after this. If you're a Michigan fan, if you can come at it with a level head, that's that side of it. But then the other side of it is like, oh, now like Bryce comes, now we lose, like maybe a little bit more disarray. Julian's obviously the big winner if he can deliver it. I think most to gain Julian, most to lose, maybe still Julian, honestly, because he'll get another. They'll both get more stabs at it, so it'd be fun if this was just a little series between them the next couple years. But yeah, I think I'd rather be Julian in a win. Like, I mean, you talk about free food, free drinks
I
for
like
life.
The catch there.
Like, are you talking about
Diet Coke?
Yeah, neither of these guys are 21, but I think if they both individually this year won the game, I think Julian can come back and like it'll be like years from now, you're the one who broke that streak. Like, thank you so much, Julian. Like, I think most to gain there for sure. But other question I had, JD, I think playing a little devil's advocate in your Florida State Mike Norvell take that you had.
Ooh,
I agree. It hasn't been consistent. Like, the inconsistency is huge. When the ACC goes divisionless and you're sitting at 17 in the standings, it's not great for Florida State. But I just wanted to ask you, in an era now where we're seeing so many coaches get fired so early in the season, so kind of early in their tenure, do you think there's some room for respecting a guy like Mike Norvell, if you're Florida State, to say, hey, like, we had a 10-win season with you. We won a conference title game with you, could have went to the playoff that year. Last 2 years haven't been great, but the fact that there's so many other places in the country where coaches are getting fired for more or less is kind of the debate there. Like, if you had to compare, I guess, the whether it's the James Franklin firing, the Brian Kelly firing, where would you put Norvell kind of in the scale of these other guys who got fired in the middle of the season, who more or less have better resumes, last couple of years maybe worse resume, depending on how you look at it? I'm just curious how you feel as far as kind of the culture that surrounds firing head coaches pretty quickly in a season and pretty quickly when things go south versus the path of maybe giving Mike Norvell some more leeway here and letting his program maybe rebuild compared to some of these other programs you've seen across the country.
It's a tricky balance to strike, to your point, because I think the thought I have around Florida State and Mike Norvell is I'm looking to next year based on what happened last year, what's happening this year, and I'm saying, what makes me think it's going to be any different than these last 2 years? Like, we caught lightning in a bottle a little bit those 2 years, and maybe it's a thing where lightning in a bottle almost waters down Mike Norvell's part in it. They had a great 2-year run where they won 10 games, then they won the ACC the next year. But even before that, it's like, man, this isn't getting me super excited. You have those 2 years. On the back half of that now, though, you're having years where, what I just said, 2-10 and fighting to make a bowl game the next year. And so, for me, I have a lot less confidence going to get better, I guess is my biggest take here. With James Franklin and Penn State, if they had finished that season out, and let's just say that Penn State gets to 8-4, 7-5 under James Franklin. Wow, what a terrible year, bad year for Penn State relative to what we thought they should be. However, the next year we'd probably talk about, can Penn State get back? Hey, they're still one of the more talented rosters in the Big Ten. Like, it wouldn't be doomsday vibes in Happy Valley. It'd be bad vibes for sure, and there would be some hot seat talk around James Franklin. But I don't think it would be the same lack of hope that I have, at least, in A1 Mike Norvell. Maybe the same conversation for LSU. This year wasn't going to get better. I don't know that that's the same, as it is for Penn. I feel better about Penn State being better in the future than I do about LSU if Brian Kelly stays there. But for Florida State, I'm just like, man, I think you're just punting because you're going to fire him, in my opinion now, based on this track record, before Halloween next year. And then you've burned 2 seasons, and then you're looking for another head coach next year when this cycle feels like it's pretty hot already. So it feels like it's delaying the inevitable, which I'm not here for.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just curious if there was some room maybe for seeing it through in an era where I think Brian Kelly and James Franklin's firings had as much to do with off the field, AD, donors, just the higher ups in that relationship. I think there's a little bit of room you can feel a little refreshed being like, hey, like, we have an AD and a coach that actually seem to have a good relationship, and he keeps giving him votes of confidence. And is willing to go through the tough times, and maybe as a result of that, there are better days ahead, better days that we've seen in a little bit more recent history. I think the better comp is Billy Napier, honestly. Billy Napier, 4 years at Florida, 22 and 23, not going anywhere, got him out of there. 38 and 33 for Mike Norvell, and obviously higher peaks within the conference. But I think there's I took Florida State's under for the season win total famously. I think it's really about how you feel with the ACC. Like the ACC seeing SMU just join the league just last year and make it to the conference title, and then this year it kind of being a top tier of teams that you wouldn't expect. I mean, we could have a Virginia versus Pitt conference title game.
Yeah.
I could see, for the same reason for Florida State, seeing the state of the conference, being very upset with where you stand as a program and being like, there's no excuse for us to be this bad. And on top of that, this league is so gettable. We have more resources and more to our disposal to be one of these teams that's competing for the ACC title, especially when you have a Virginia in the mix and a Georgia Tech in the mix. And then the same token, they could be like, oh, Mike, you know what? Like, it's bad right now, but we see how the conference is, and we think you could turn things around quickly enough and we can get right back on top.
Yeah.
So interesting for sure. I think there's a little bit more leeway with seeing it through with Mike Norvell. The more I sleep on it and the more you just kind of look at the state of college football. But overall, I do agree with you, man. Like, the inconsistency is the thing for me. You can't go from being a 13-win to 2-win team and then go right back, like keep trending up and down in the same bad section of whatever line graph you want to picture of what they got going on. So I think it's too much portal reliance. I think it's not enough in the backyard. But I was just curious if there's a little bit room of a contrarian take as far as coaches getting fired and not having long tenures, it seems like, in college football, and if that's going to continue.
No, it's fair. And, like, I'd feel different if this was Duke football we were talking about.
Yeah.
I'd feel different if it was North Carolina, or if we're talking about, Baylor, one of my pseudo alma mater, where my wife went to school. Like, if it wasn't Florida State, I don't think I'd be so riled up. It's like we've seen – it's like that – it's like the straight A student that comes home with C's. It's like, you're better than this. Why are you underachieving to this degree? We know you're smart. We know you're capable. We've seen it before. Let's do something. Let's take some action. Let's not sit on our hands while everyone else in the class seemingly passes us by. But that $58 million, Cato, that's the one part where I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty penny. I don't know that I get super excited to pay $58 million to get anyone fired either, but so it goes.
Conspiracy theory. They're holding on to Mike Norvell until they eventually, inevitably move up to the SEC, and that's when they'll want a new head coach to usher them into a new era with a new conference. There's Conspiracy Cato now twice this week.
It's a long time to
2
wait.
appearances.
It's a long time to wait.
Is it?
Buyout doesn't drop till like 2028, 2030 or something like that. They got either way. Maybe they're sitting on their hands and saying, all right, we're going to get this war chest ready for NIL. We'll save that money. I see it. I see where you're going.
They're waiting. It's not this
cycle.
They're waiting for the next big cycle. Like they're looking in the future in an era where ADs are just letting go of coaches so fast. I appreciate Florida State for seeing it through with Mike Norvell, just because it's hard to do now in the landscape, and I think that's one of the harder coaches and places to do it. Especially, I'm sure there's a ton of pressure to get him out of there, and they're sticking to their guns. So shout out loyalty, not overrated as far as ADs and head coaches and trust in the process. We'll see.
Playing the long game. Folks in Tallahassee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with it. Great stuff, Cato, as always, man. As always, appreciate y'all making this show what it is. All right, one more show here. If you thought we weren't having a show tomorrow, you're out of your gourd. Tomorrow, Aaron Murray on the show, talking ball, talking the game, talking Texas A&M, talking Georgia, talking everything, man. So make sure you're subscribed. His thoughts on Lane Kiffin also tomorrow. We appreciate y'all, man. We're thankful for y'all. Have yourself a tremendous Thanksgiving Eve. We love y'all. We'll keep this party rolling. And we'll see y'all next time.